welcome to another stream, another CreateOS Lounge. It's been a minute. The team has been very busy. This is a special one. I think it's been pretty partner focused this week. We had the one with Lucas from BNB the other day, and today is no less. I think it's a perfect way to end and cap off the week. Today I'm joined by Suhas, who is the co-founder at LocalHost, and Rudel, who I'm sure everyone is familiar, who is also part of the BD team. How's everyone doing today?
Doing good, doing good.
Rudel?
Yeah, just like wrapping up the week now, so pretty good.
Let's go. And I think it's not news that we partnered together, right, with localhost, but I think it's useful to have these kind of conversations to add more context as to what is the nature of the partnership, right? Like how it actually looks like the specifics and what's next. At a high level, I can say that NodeOps has joined the localhost as an infrastructure and deployment partner with 30K USD in combined support reserved for founders coming through the program. So maybe Suhas, you can shed a little bit more light on what is localhost and of course how the specifics of your program, if possible, please.
So, right, localhost is like designed specifically for like high ambitious early stage founders building in technology driven companies. It's not only like tech. Recently we back to chef, people in artistic and like outside of like tech areas also we have started support. But ideally we started our journey with technology companies, climate tech companies, AI infrastructure companies. We also have a MediaX technology company on the side where we actually host these AI film festivals across the world, work on media and researchers there. And on the venture side, we actually invest in companies and we run programs with them where we launch these companies into the markets in public spaces and help them grow faster. Um, and we kind of like work alongside these early stage companies and help them out from their day-to-day work and as long-term partners once we invest. And it turns out to be a very meaningful collaboration with us as a firm and with the founders whom they're trying to build a new company out of.
Quite the summary, and I think it's pretty comprehensive, right? And it's not the first, what can I say, program there is out there, right? So what sort of gap do you see, because I'm sure you seem pretty young, right? What gap do you see on the market that you saw, okay, that you and your co-founders felt that it was needed to put together like a unique like what makes your program different, right? And like what would you be your pitch for builders out there?
Um, a lot of the founders we work with are like extremely early, sometimes even before a company is fully formed. But they already show strong signals around technical depth, speed, and like founder market fit. And our focus has always been backing people early and helping them move from raw potential to like real company building. And that can only happen through like capitals, strategic support, infrastructure support, media support, and access to the right network at the right time. So we spend a lot of time identifying these founders who may not be yet visible through traditional venture pipelines, but some of the strongest builders today are emerging outside the conventional system. And we think that trend will continue over the next decade. And we kind of like look into the founders who have more clarity of thinking, executional ability, and long-term conviction. And we work on these gaps basically.
Okay, makes sense. And there is both like it's a double-edged sword, right? When you're looking at venture that early, in the sense that there's a lot of risk and opportunity involved, right? Because there's no what can I say, external validation either. That may be by capital raise or users. So how are you able to identify that early value with propositions, right? Like what are some of the metrics or parameters that you have in place within your decision-making framework?
I mean, today it's easier than ever to build demos and product with AI tools and modern framework. And I think most projects fail because the founders lack intelligence, or don't fail because they lack intelligence or like technical ability. But I feel like they do not have that conviction over the long-term projects, or I think they stall because of the gap between building a prototype and operating a real product. They feel left for mode a little bit. So when we look into these companies who are at early stages, we kind of bring them into a community of builders who are also in that, so they get to be part of the family which is growing in the early stages. So they get comfortable enough and they actually work in that environment. Capital, credit system, all these support systems are secondary, but our first approach is always to the community of founders. And I think a lot of early stage founders underestimate how important it is to be surrounded by the same mindset folks, that you actually end up getting more boost from them. So we build a community around these young founders trying to build in early stage, and then we deploy capital to them, and that's how we have been working along these young folks. Of course, there's a risk factor, but usually in these environments, they end up performing much better compared to like what they do if they were not in this environment.
That makes sense, absolutely. And I think, uh, in a way, there's never been a better time for you to start such a program, right? And that it's fertile ground for like anyone can become a builder right now. All you need is an idea, as you correctly mentioned, right? Myrtle, from your end, and I would say from our end, what made you sort of decide that localhost was a special program, and maybe you can shed some light as to how you thought and how you see essentially CreateOS come into the equation, right? And why it was a good fit.
Sure. For most ecosystem partnerships that we look at are like mainly essentially logo swaps, like both sides put logo on a website and call it a partnership. We didn't want it to do that. What stood out about localhost is that, like you mentioned, is working with builders who are already shipping. They're not waiting for funding to start. They are getting the right environment to work with, and that's exactly the profile that benefits from infrastructure access rather than advisory or just mentorship in general. So, we structured the credit pool specifically to reflect that in terms of, okay, there's a separate pool for like broader cohort which can get access to, and then a separate pool created for very focused teams that show real development intent. So we're not trying to basically onboard everyone, we're just trying to find the teams that actually want to build on the stack and support them deeply. CreateOS in general kind of becomes like um, uh, a tool for them, like to get them started like pretty quickly. And I think any VPS provider, if you end up going to it, will take like good amount of time for them to just figure things out. Not just that, I think from the deployment side, we also intend to provide our NodeOps router, which is our LLM gateway. So they don't have to work with multiple different API keys with different AI models in general, but like um, we make it possible for them to like deploy and through one single API, which can basically help them provide all the resources, be it from frontier or open source models in general. So that's like the speed at which the founders are building for this cohort at localhost. I think that's where we wanted to make sure that we be the enablement layer for development and infra, and then like it's up to them to however they want to scale.
I mean, couldn't have said it better. And I think it's very well. Tell me if I'm wrong, right? So, as also from your end, considering that you have a front row seat to the day to day of what it looks like to build something, right, and get something moving from the. I think a lot of people talk about 0 to 1, but then you probably just see posts of people saying, "Oh, celebrating a milestone," but you don't actually see all the graft and work that goes into the behind the scenes, right? So what are some of the learnings that maybe you can shed some light on as to how painful it's been for builders to go maybe from an idea to a live sort of like in production um, app, right, or project, and how do you see CreateOS sort of being, and NodeOps in general being a key enablement layer for builders in the program?
So, right, when you're building a prototype, the goal is usually speed. and like you're trying to validate an idea, test a product, or prove like technical capabilities of what you're trying to build. But as soon as you like come to production, things change. The standard completely the technology and the standards of what you have built completely changes, because now real users depend on what you have built. And at that stage, consistency becomes like a very extremely important thing, and founders need to think beyond just shipping features. They gotta rethink about reliability, deployment, features, scalability, performances, feedback loops, a lot of back and forth with users. So what we have observed is that the strongest founders among our entire community are like not necessarily the ones who are like building like the fastest demos, but they're actually the ones who are like executing and iterating quickly and operating systems. One instance being, we had like a couple of founders here who took their product to like production, and after that they had like literally like 25 calls a day, scheduled with like users to like go through like feedback loops. And that ability to move from like prototype to production is like a real ability of transitioning to what you're trying to build as an actual company.
Undoubtedly. And how do you see, like, sort of when conversations started and talks started, right, with us, how do you see the gap almost disappearing, right, through the availability of CreateOS for builders? Would you be able to shed some light on that, if possible, please?
Yeah, I mean, the part when Rudul and I had a chat, the partnership made sense because both teams were aligned on supporting ambitious early stage founders, building tech companies, and we at Localhost plays a big part of that. What we're trying to do with founders, move fast through capital, network, and all of those, bunch of other support system which we have. But one of like the biggest friction point for our early teams is like the operational complexity as they begin to scale products and they require infrastructure. And then when I had like a chat with Mridul and the other team members, NodeOps became like an extremely valuable part because they were helping founders by deploying infrastructure, and also like allowed, and they were also like very interested in like talking and helping out with team members who wanted to like build on Node, on CreateOS, and it made so much more ecosystem sense that there were two parties working alongside one company to like make them go big. And um, and I see like this infrastructure being a very important enabler for innovation, especially when you're like early stage companies. So that's where the partnership made really sense, and it was all about giving founders stronger operational foundation on their like earlier journeys.
There you go. Murdo, anything to add? I doubt it. I think it was pretty comprehensive answer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for us also, like, we've always seen like people kind of build prototypes pretty quickly, but like they kind of keep hitting walls the moment they try to go live, uh, be it on production, because like what Suhas mentioned, right? Like, uh, some projects or startups would like end up having like 20-25 calls every week, and then the moment it is live, things starts breaking. So that's where I mean, we wanted to fill the gap in terms of like infra config, API management, deployment pipelines. So these are just like in engineering problems, they are operational overhead problems, and that's where like CreateOS is built for catering to this gap. And yeah, I mean, the builders that benefits most is the one who has a working idea and needs the path from working locally to basically scaling at production, and at a shortest time possible.
Brilliant. And I think, what can I say? Maybe shedding light also on what the new experience would look like for those builders with the availability of CodeS would also be useful. So Suhas, for example, right? You mentioned, and let's use the example of that team, that they don't necessarily need to worry any longer about infrastructure headaches or pain points, because now there is a platform in place that is able to take them from local to production with reliability and security and performance and consistency. So, how do you, as a sort of mentor, right, for the program, advise them to use that time? So, is it being focused on distribution, obsess over those early users? I think it would be an interesting insight for the listeners.
I mean, when for early stage founders, infrastructure is about leverage, and the easier it is to deploy, test, scale, it's the best and fast for them to also work and feedback on. And especially now with the AI native product that's coming out, it's become like a very core part of what they're trying to do. And whenever I speak to these founders and talk about how they are trying to scale their infrastructures, in the beginning it feels a little complicated. It feels overwhelmed. People have just stacked a bunch of things and then slowly starts breaking apart, as I told you last time before. Once they hit production, it starts breaking apart. But I feel like now, as slowly they are trying to grow, a large chunk of it is being handled by like agentic interfaces and agent commands. And these guys, like the founders, are like now focusing more on like scalability and reliability now. And that's like the major shift I have seen recently. And it's fabulous to see how the technology has changed so fast. Like a year back when I had the same cohort running, we see a lot of folks doing manually, like most of them were like actually working on like deploying them manually. Now it's just like a bunch of bots and agentic interfaces like doing all the tedious work for them, and they get to like work on scalability and reliability. So there's a really massive shift in how I see infrastructure getting built right now.
I agree, but I think the focus is also shifting more on trying to stand out, right? Because there is a lot more, what can I say, competition fighting over the same limited attention of the same pool of users, right, that are chronically online. So how are you able to sort of navigate, or yeah, what can I say, be of help for those builders on that front?
Um, I mean, like, you no longer need to be in a specific geography or come from like a traditional pedigree to build some technology or like access to something, right? And at the same time, founders are becoming much more technical and much more younger. And many of the strongest founders I know right now are building and constantly shipping and learning from a bunch of other folks. And from my perspective, I see these folks building on top of a lot of agentic layers, and a bunch of these folks have already started using, for example, NodeOps itself. They're like testing, scaling them, doing a bunch of A/B testing, and seeing how they're trying to do. Um, I really don't know how the future is going to look for now, but right now it's very exciting on how these agentic interfaces are like working and how I see them day to day working on top of it. And on long term, I feel like that can go beyond investing in capital, because there's a bunch of gaps that can be filled. It can be for design, it can be infrastructure, it can be like cloud. So there is a lot of things which I'm also learning slowly along with these folks with the new shift.
Agreed. Um, I think it's almost impossible to keep up with the speed of it, but you're definitely at the melting pot, same as Murul, right? And I mean, me too. But Murul, have you noticed something, maybe some patterns from a builder standpoint, or is there a specific development or trend that you think is currently very entertaining or exciting? What do you think?
I mean, what I'm seeing, and I think this is also broadly covered by a lot of folks, is like uh, the product life cycle now for AI projects or AI companies is like very different from how it used to be for like traditional SaaS in general. But everyone is trying to target that enthusiast audience right now to start with, so that like these enthusiasts can come onto your platform, they use your platform, and then they become the voice uh, for for your distribution in general, right? uh, that earlier has like it was pretty okay to crack, but now it's too difficult, or like it's a bit challenging, because like you have 3 4 different products coming out of the same niche these days, and then like getting the right distribution, getting to the right folks is kind of become challenging. And one route that I've seen a lot of founders taking in is like making the core structure of the product open source, and then like give services on top of it. So the moment you make it open source, people know, community knows, distribution expands, and if any enterprise or any B2B business wants to build on top of it, then you kind of extend it to more of like a white labeled or a specialized service based deployment of that product. So that's one pattern that I'm seeing a lot, and like kind of helps with the same curve of enthusiast adoption, and then basically keep going with the actual adoption from B2B and other enterprises in general.
Fair. I think that's a pretty interesting view, right? I think the beauty of it is that at this stage, nobody can really forecast or foresee or predict like what will actually like what specific vertical AI or what particular integration will what can I say hit the moon, right? You could say in a way. So I think that's particularly exciting for builders out there. So to unleash their creativity because they don't have a lane that they need to follow. Say it might be, oh, if you don't build in prediction markets, then you're never going to make it. I don't think it's like that at all. And you can truly do anything and everything, right? And even as wild as going with a blow dryer at the Paris airport to manipulate, like it's just nuts times that we live in, right? So so Has, in terms of actual day-to-day support, right, like would you be able to shed light as to maybe what a day in the program for a founder would actually look like?
Yeah, so day-to-day support is very operational and founder focused for us. At the In a day we kind of work, we do office hours with founders where we actually go through what they're building. So this is a general update for us to what's happening with them. Then we have a community fund where they actually use this capital deployed to scale by whatever they require for growing their companies. Some of them require help in like incorporation, patents, so we sit with the legal team and help them out with that. Apart from this, a few folks are like fundraising, so we help them, with like us joining the cap table or in general connecting them to the founders or like investors, VCs who would be interested in them. So in a typical day at the HQ, it's gonna be like one, we do launch videos for these folks, media support. Second, it's just one-on-one with founders, working with them to understand what's their pain point and how we can actually just like eliminate them so they can actually focus on scaling. And two is there's these credit partners whom we have partnered up with. We start deploying those. We give them like a bunch of links, documentation, so they actually know what's coming next, and they actually get prepared to like use those resources. So that's very pretty much straightforward. It's very operationally heavily focused on founders and resource allocation to them.
Okay, I understand, but I'm pretty sure it's not just that simple, right? I'm sure that you've sort of summarized it and recapped it, but the actual day to day is way more intricate than that, right? And what sort of stood out about you guys and what piqued my interest was the fact that you're after unconventional builders, so cut almost from a different cloth, right? So I wanted to ask, like, what makes them unconventional and more fun to work with, right? Is it just because their idea is more ambitious and crazy in a way, so it's just more fun, right, from your end? Or have you noticed any specific patterns as well in what they're in the kind of founders that you're seeing, right?
um, when we back founders at localhost, we what we look for the most is like clarity of thinking. Whenever we have a call with them, we have actually ask some retrospective personal questions on how they answer, and what's like their next 6 months or 9 months plan. We don't usually ask like a 2 year, 1 year plan, because if your 6 months plan does not work, there's no use of like thinking 1 year or 2 years ahead. So that 6 months plan, clarity of thinking is what we look for. Execution ability. So when I talk about execution ability, a lot of folks get confused. It's pretty straightforward. It's basically the idea what you're trying to build versus your previous experience, and do you have that technical ability to build them. That's what we actually look into, and that can be through your previous experiences, past projects, or through some um, links or document you send us. So it gives us a comprehensive overlook of what you're trying to build, and gives us a conviction of what you're trying to build. And lastly, it's about the founder's conviction of how long they want to go. Some people come here as building a hobby project, which we do support in some cases. And some folks come here to build companies. So there are like two different founders. Who one are like founders building indie projects, and there are second higher pedigree of people here, which are the company founders and startup founders who want to like grow into like big companies. So this is what we look for. And a lot of founders we work with are like very, very early. Some of them like just have an idea when they apply, or they just have an MVP, or maybe they just have like something like few users. So there's a very mixed group of people here. And sometimes uh, they start making revenue very early off, and then there are some people who just grew their users here. So our focus has always been backing people early and helping them move from like idea to like real company. And we do that through the support we do, which I told you, like company corporation fundraising, capital deployment, partner supports, and all of those. And we also identify a lot of founders to um, you know not these founders are not somebody who venture capital firms in the traditional sense would back them early on, but we would like back them because these are like very ambitious folks. Sometimes things might go south, but there's like chances where you can actually give a person their chance to grow this into a big company. And most of the time the environment turns them into a good companies, or like at least like a decently successful ones, and then they grow out from here.
Right. And I think, I mean, what you said at the beginning makes sense, sort of just logically, that if you are a builder who might be, what can I say, not as driven, right? But you're surrounded by cracked individuals who are just, obsessed over their idea, then inevitably, I think that will make you more disciplined and understand, okay, hey, like these are the stakes, and like this is what it takes for, my fellow builders to, let's say, make it, right? So I think that makes sense. But from your end, right, have you noticed any patterns in builders who might come to you with a little bit more naivety, right? Because I think being naive sometimes can help, right? And approach things with a little bit more of a lighthearted approach, right? So and say, hey, like I have this idea. I come to you to probably stress test it together. I might not know from day one that it's going to be a unicorn, right? But like, and if so, do you see those builders being the ones that actually go that one step further compared to the ones that come with conviction and like a lot of confidence from day one? Like, what's the difference there?
I'll give you like an example. So we had one of our founder who came with no idea. Like he wanted to build like a hardware device. He came to us and he came with the same idea of a hardware device. And slowly he started building it. He built the hardware device in 30 days. A lot of traction happened, but slowly he decided, this is not something which is scalable. And then he pivoted later into a software first device for people who are building the same hardware across any world. It's basically an open source plug for it. And that evolved much bigger. It became an environment playground for agent. So sometimes, if you don't come with idea, you get matured faster compared to people who come with idea, which I do agree, because you get to experience different flow state of what's happening around you and what's happening around the product, and actually tune it. But there are some folks who are married to an idea and they're not ready to like pivot or change it. So that's a little bit tricky. But generally, we have seen folks who come with no idea turning into something really great over like 6 months down the lane, and that is purely through the narrative that they have gone through when they're building. Versus there are folks who come with like a convicted idea, but there are like 20% of those folks are and gonna end up like staying onto that and continue to build, versus like the rest 80% might just pivot into something else down the lane. So that there is the difference between it, but usually I do prefer people who coming with like raw ideas, with at least like a basic MVP should be fine, rather than having like something which is like detailedly sophisticated into a product. If you have like a background, very good background enough to like actually go and have like full conviction, it makes sense for you to like actually be convicted and be married to an
Right.
idea. Versus if you are like very like skeptical about what's going to happen. You are just trying to figure out entrepreneurship here and like trying to do experimenting. That's totally fine as well. You're going to learn a lot once you actually like show this to like people and you get feedbacks. So it's a win-win.
I think that's super interesting. Muru, what do you think? Like, given also the fact that you're, the first line of scrimmage, right? And NodeOps, when you're speaking to partners, builders, and you just speak to a lot of folks on a daily basis. Do you think that you see more builders that are like the ones that you deem a little bit more, what can I say, ready, are the ones that are more naive, or like maybe more like dreamlike, and that they have a vision but they're not so strict? Or the ones that are more confident are the ones that you think are the ones that will be able to navigate these competitive waters that we're in today?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer this question, but like before that, I just want to tell you like the one bit, like when I first had a chat with Suhas and Naman and I, we were like discussing something, and Suhas just mentioned like we'll get you the best, uh, very quality founders and very quality projects in general. And I was like, okay, I mean, I would love to know more, and so far it has been true in terms of like the cohort that these guys have kind of formed. uh, but to coming to your question, I think uh, I mean it's mixed right now, to be honest. I think uh, you, me, I mean, we've like hang out a lot on Reddit, and then we see like founders building something or the other every now and then, and some idea would like pop up and people will start sharing that they've started generating revenue from day 30, day 15, day 10. Totally depends on how they've kind of come up about the whole product or the idea in general, and how quickly they can um, reach a level and that they can cater to like a good number of audience in general. Uh, it's totally dependent on the founder itself. I feel like the bets are majorly made on founders rather than the product itself, because like no matter what product you make, if the founder is very enthusiastic, very focused, or knows about stuff, then I think he, no matter what, he'll win, be it any product or project that he kind of works on. So for me, that becomes more important than just the product itself, of uh, okay, is there a demand for this product or not, or uh, or like how things are shifting, where things are going. Definitely, like some early stage startups, if we can get hold of them, that's amazing, and you have like conviction towards those. But uh, I think I love talking to founders a lot, and then that's how I make my decisions in terms of should we back them or not, from our end.
Makes sense. I think the key takeaway from both of you, yours experience, is that the human touch is inevitable, and like it's necessary, right, and essential. So I think it's exciting times, and the road ahead is very exciting, right, for builders, because they can just focus on building now, and I think that's when they do their best work, right, when they're unleash their full creativity, and they don't necessarily have to worry about infrastructure and the logistics of ensuring that the scaffolding is in place. And that's why we wanted to come in with and support local host builders accordingly. So has exciting times ahead. We're wrapping things up. For both of you, are there any sort of concluding remarks that you want to share? If so, now's the time.
No, Rick, all good. It's been great working with you guys and along with the founders. So, yeah, exciting times.
Yeah, same here. I mean, uh, like I'm pretty happy about the partnership. I mentioned like how we got conversing, and I'm looking forward to basically meet more founders from localhost, and then doing the best that we can to help them and help them grow in general.
There you go, folks. You heard it from Rudo and Suhas. Guys, thank you very much, and look forward to being in touch and doing this again further down the line.
Thank you.